Hi everyone and welcome to Family Connect. My name's Lauren. I'm sure you've all seen me before and spoken to me before, but thank you for joining us. We are joined by Stephen McAvoy this evening, who is our Welfare Rights Advisor at Enable. I was just saying we had a little poll on Facebook to see what you wanted Stephen to come along and talk to us about, and by quite a big majority actually, the result was the impact of inheritance on benefits. So Stephen, I will hand over to you. You know much more about that than I do, so I'll hand over to you. What we were going to say was if anybody's got any questions, please pop them in the wee chat box or keep a note of them just so that Stephen can come back to them at the end so that we don't forget or we don't miss anything. And also, as I said, Stephen's happy to chat to anybody individually afterwards. But Stephen, over to you. Thanks so much for coming along.
So thanks very much for inviting us along. So what I'm going to do is benefits, as always, is quite a complicated area. So I'm going to run through some of the different categories of benefits that we have, and then I will let you know if inheritance could potentially impact those or if they won't potentially impact those. So the first category of benefit is what we call disability benefits. So disability benefits are benefits like disability of allowance, personal independence payment, attendance allowance, the adult disability payment, or the child disability payment. Disability benefits are benefits that are paid to someone who has a disability, and then because of that disability, they require certain types of additional support. Those benefits are non-means tested, they're non-taxable, so your financial circumstances or the financial circumstances of your family are irrelevant. So if somebody was to inherit money or property or anything like that, it would not have any impact at all on the disability benefit. So that's fine, that would be completely unaffected. Another type of benefit that we have is what we call contribution-based benefits. So contribution-based benefits are benefits that are based on your national insurance record. So the biggest contribution-based benefit is the state pension. That's based on an individual's national insurance record, either what they've paid through employment or if they've maybe been credited with a national insurance stamp because they've been claiming certain types of benefits. If somebody was to inherit money or property or anything like that, then it wouldn't affect their state pension because, again, that's solely based on their own individual national insurance record. There is a contribution-based benefit called employment support allowance. Now, employment support allowance is a wee bit of a tricky benefit because we actually get two different types of employment support allowance. The first type I'm going to speak about is contribution-based employment support allowance. So that's a type of employment support allowance that somebody gets when they've either been working before they claimed it, or in the past, the rules used to be that if you had a young person who had a disability, and because of that disability, they'd never had a chance to kind of enter the labour market in the way that somebody without a disability might, the rules were relaxed so that that young person would be treated as if they had paid a stamp. So you will find lots of people who have a learning disability or autism who are maybe in their 30s and 40s now, who will be getting contribution-based ESA, despite the fact that they've never worked. And that's the reason why they will be getting it. It was because the rules used to be relaxed for people in these circumstances. If you get contribution-based employment support allowance and you inherit capital, that will not affect it. If you inherit property, that will not affect it. The only thing that would really potentially affect contribution-based employment support allowance would be if you inherited a works pension from somebody. If you inherit a works pension from maybe your mum or dad or something like that, if that's allowed by their pension scheme, then that can affect your employment support allowance, but it needs to be at a certain level before it starts to affect it. So it would depend on how much the occupational pension was. But everything else wouldn't have an impact on contribution-based employment support allowance. The other types of benefits that we get are means-tested benefits. So those are benefits where your income or savings or the income or savings of a partner, if you've got one, can have an impact on whether or not you get it or not. So as well as contribution-based employment support allowance, we have a type of employment support allowance called income-related, and that is a means-tested type. Some people get contribution-based ESA only, some people get income-based only, or some people actually get them both at the same time. Why that can happen can be quite complicated, so I would kind of need to give you a half-day's training session on that. But basically, if you get an award letter for the DWP, it should break down there what type the person that you're dealing with has got. If the person has got income-related employment support allowance and they would inherit money, then yes, that could potentially affect their entitlement to that. There are two capital limits for working age people. They can have up to 6,000 in the bank and there is no impact. If they go above 16,000, a penny above 16,000, then any means tested benefit they get will stop. So up to 6,000, no impact at all. A penny above 16, it stops deed. Between 6 and 16, they can still get the means tested benefit, but it will be reduced. The first 6,000 of any capital they've got is disregarded. You then need to take the remainder. So say, for example, somebody inherited £10,000. The first 6,000 would be disregarded. That leaves you 4,000, and you divide that by 250. So that would be 16. So their income-related employment support allowance would be reduced by £16 a week. So they could still get it between 6 and 16, but it will be reduced. A penny above 16, no, income-related employment support allowance will stop deed. If they inherit property, if they live in the property, so if it's the house they live in, that's fine, that's disregarded as capital. If they inherit a house that they do not live in, then chances are that's going to be treated as capital, and that would stop income-related employment support allowance as well. Tax credits. Tax credits are a means-tested benefit to an extent because they're based on your taxable income. So your capital for that doesn't matter, doesn't have any impact on it. However, the DWP are just starting a process to move people who get tax credits over to universal credit. So tax credits in the longer term might actually not be around that much longer. That process is just starting in August this year for a limited number of people. But as the years progress, the plan is that more and more people on tax credits will be migrated over to universal credit. So if you're kind of future planning and you're planning for somebody with tax credits, it might be better to set that benefit to the side and look at what would happen if they would inherit money under universal credit. Universal credit is the same capital limits as income-related employment support allowance. There's up to 6 is fine. Over 16, you don't get any universal credit. Between 6 and 16, it gets reduced. Housing benefit, above 16,000, won't get any housing benefit. That would completely stop deed. Again, same rules, up to 6,000 disregarded. Between 6 and 16, it can potentially be reduced. Pension credit is a means-tested benefit. So you have the state pension, which is a contribution-based benefit. So that's based on the NI record of the person. Pension credit is different. That's a means-tested benefit. So only pensioners on a low income get that. That is affected by capital. So the state pension isn't. Pension credit is. The capital limits for pension credit are slightly different. It starts at 10,000 rather than 6. And the higher limit is still 16. So you can disregard the first 10 and it's still probably going to stop if you go a penny above 16. Technically speaking, a very small number of pensioners could have above more than 16,000 in the bank, but you're very unlikely to see that. So the general rule will probably be true for most people, which is that if they go above 16, they're probably not going to get pension credit. Between 10 and 16, you still get pension credit, but it gets reduced by £2 a week for every £1,000 that you're above the 10. So if you've got 11,000 in the bank, your pension credit would get reduced by £2 a week. So what happens with benefits when somebody has an inheritance? It really depends on what the benefit is, because people can have a combination of benefits. So you might have somebody who gets ESA and housing benefit. They might get tax credits and housing benefit. There's a kind of big mixture of benefits that people can all get at the one time. Council tax benefit is another means-tested benefit, and it's the same capital rules. If you're working age, it's the 6 and 16 limit. If you're state pension age, it's the 10 and 16 limit. A lot of the people who we work with have an exemption for council tax. You've maybe came across this. It's not particularly nice terminology, but they created this back in the early 90s. So it's called a severe mental impairment exemption. And if somebody that you care for or support or a family member has one of those, they're just basically exempt for council tax. So if they were living by themselves, it wouldn't matter how much they inherited, they would still be exempt for the council tax. If they inherited a property, they would become liable for the council tax on that, because it could only be exempt for one property at a time. So probably the upshot of this is it's probably best to get an individual benefit check for the person that you're maybe thinking about will inherit something, or if you're thinking about inheriting something yourself, to get that individual benefit check and give you a list of this is what's likely to happen depending on what you inherit. Sometimes it's possible for people to avoid their inheritance having an impact on benefits, and the way they do that is by setting up a trust. So the person themselves does not inherit the money or the capital. That goes from the person who has it. It goes from their estate to the trust. It never actually is the legal property of the person that it's intended to help. And what the trust does is the trust basically exists to help that person. So the person has no automatic right to the money, but what they can do is they can make an application to the trust and say, I need X, Y, and Z, and the trust can decide whether or not they allow the person to have that. And because the person has never actually inherited the money themselves and they've got to make an application for it, a lot of the time that means that it doesn't have any impact on the benefits. Now, I am only advising on that for a purely benefits perspective. Whether or not you set up a trust, you would need legal advice on that, because there's all sorts of other things to consider, like tax and wills and all that kind of stuff that I'm nowhere near qualified in. So if you were interested in that, you would want to look a wee bit further into that option. I think we've still got some basic advice on the Enable Scotland website about what a trust is and when it can be a good idea to set it up. But you also need independent legal advice yourself to take you through all the options and the positives and negatives and that kind of stuff. But purely for a benefit perspective, that can be something that can help the person maintain their benefit and still get some of the benefits through the family member's estate. That's kind of the main summary of the benefits that can be affected by an inheritance. I don't know, I see there's no any questions in the chat, but I don't know if anybody has any questions just based on what I've said.
I'm so glad you're around, Stephen, because they don't make it easy. Like even all these like different benefits just blows my mind. So I know how helpful Stephen is to me in my role and me sending people to him all the time, because I don't ever want to give anyone the wrong advice. But Anne, go ahead. I can see you've got your hand up. It's lovely to see you.
Yeah, Stephen, you said something there that something I didn't know anything about. So I've just been looking through all my paperwork. ESA, the contribution based or income related or the mixture of both. How do we find out? I thought you said, I thought I heard you say that it would be on our paperwork, but I've just gone through 4 years of ESA letters and I don't see anything that tells us what.
Right, okay. So if you look at one of the letters, the starting point, it should mention about the amount of money that the law says that you need to live on.
On the page where it actually says the...
Aye, so it should have a breakdown. So the starting point will be the amount of money that the law says that you need to live on, and that will have a list of figures on it.
Right, hold on 2 seconds. Let me just get this, because I'm just interested in this. There's so many bits of paper here. There's so many different payments.
They're always super organised.
Here we go. Right, I've got it here. So I've got this is your living expenses.
8480.
Money cause you're extra money because you're severely disabled, extra money for disability income guarantee, extra money because you're in a support group, which gives you a total income related amount. Is that where it's saying?
Aye. So the letters, they aren't always 100% accurate, but they should give you an idea if it is both or not. So what they do is they add up all the figures, and that will give you the amount of money the law says the person needs to live off of. The middle of the letter probably says if it's DLA or PIP, but then says that's disregarded.
Yes.
So if the person has any money that does count, that's where it would be. So if the person had the savings between 6 and 16, that's where you would see the money coming off. And
Okay.
then the very end is basically them paying you the difference between your income and that figure at the top.
Okay, so that's quite interesting because when you were saying earlier about at one point this was based on contribution, i.e. The state was giving you a contribution towards it because you were disabled but you couldn't work, and that was maybe going back what, 20 years?
So it's gone back since up to around about the point they created employment support allowance, which would be, I don't know, it was 2012, 2007.
Okay.
That would have come in. So basically, the people who would have benefited for that rule would have originally a way back been on a benefit called either incapacity benefit or severe disablement allowance. And then they would have been moved for that on employment support allowance. That's the people who will usually have a contribution.
That's quite interesting to me because my brother should have been in that category, and I would have expected them to have seen the double thing, the ESA and income related, you know, but rather than income related. Fortunately for him, we're already through this process in that we do have a discretionary trust, so for his benefit. So it won't affect him, but it would have if we hadn't had that, and I wouldn't have known that. So it's quite interesting, Stephen, because it's one of those things that I should maybe look into a wee bit more just to be sure the records show the right thing, so that if anything ever happens in the future, because you never know what can change.
Most of the time it won't make a material difference to the amount of money that the person gets, but the time that it does, as if they have more than 16,000, because the letters for ESA are sometimes a bit of a garbled mess, and they clearly don't make any level of logical sense, but you can usually figure it out by if the person was on either incapacity benefit or SDA, then they probably went for that to ESA, and in which case they would put on contribution-based ESA. The DWP with football, and you had a full problem with that, and they struggled with the fact of two different types of ESA. But if it's somebody with learning disability in maybe their 30s and 40s, it would trigger to me to ask.
Well, my brother's in his mid-60s. So he's definitely on SDA before, you know, so yeah, that's fine. I mean, I'm just glad that, because that's something I didn't know, so it's useful for me, and I will watch out if something comes up again in the future. I would know about that.
It wouldn't surprise me if you float them up if they actually say he gets contribution based and it's just the letters a bit of a mess.
Okay. Thank you very much for that explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne.
Sorry.
No, you're fine, Bobby. Go ahead.
Stephen, there was a lot of information there. There was just one question. My daughter gets universal credit, and part of the universal, when you get the universal credit figures, you're probably well aware, they make all these deductions for other benefits you're getting, ESA being one. But the other deduction they make is housing benefit. And it was just to clarify, would there be any change in housing benefit? Or would the 6,000, 16,000 rule apply in relation to housing benefit within our universal credit award?
Right. So if somebody's on universal credit, what they generally do is, and like everything, there's an exception to that. The vast majority of universal credit claimants, they don't get housing benefit as a separate benefit. What they get is they get an element for living expenses, then they get an element for their rent. So it's one benefit. So if they were to go above the 16,000, the full benefit would just stop.
Maybe I've not explained it right. It's a rent that actually comes off her universal credit before she actually gets it. It's paid at source.
Right. Okay. So it's still the same thing. So all that's happening there is they're just paying it directly to the landlord. So if she was to go above 16,000, all of that would just stop, and the landlord would just stop getting the money. She would need to pay her rent by herself.
Okay. Thanks for that. That's good to know.
I know. I honestly, like, it just, all of this blows my mind. I'm so glad you're here, Stephen. But Bobby, if you want any, like, if you wanted to chat to Stephen about anything, or you want any further information, please just let us know, and you know we can connect you up. It's,
have sorry,
he's a helpful guy.
I know because I've spoken to him a couple of times before.
Yeah, yeah. He's a helpful guy. He's a handy guy to know. But no, if anybody needs anything, please just let us know and we can put you in touch with Stephen. Bill, as usual, waiting patiently with your hand up whilst we're all gabbing.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
That's fine. Stephen, I noticed that adult disability payment now includes osteoarthritis and arthritis, right? Now, my wife is due to officially get her pension in August. Should she be applying for ADP at the moment, or should maybe even wait to see if she's entitled to attendance allowance? She is down for a knee replacement and she has got arthritis and she's taking painkillers for it.
Is she state pension age?
She won't be in a few weeks' time.
Right, okay. You probably want to apply for the adult disability payment now rather than wait. The adult disability payment has got two components. It's got the daily living component and the mobility component. If you wait for attendance allowance, there is no mobility component. So that will be gone forever, basically. So you want to make a claim now before she turns state pension age. The adult disability payment doesn't really care about the type of disability that you've got. What they're interested in is, one, do you have one? But then they're also interested in how it affects you, because that's how they decide who gets it. It's a points-based system. So it doesn't really matter what your disability is. What they're interested in is, right, what support do you need? Do you struggle making a meal? Do you struggle walking? How far do you struggle? Can you wash and dress and all that kind of stuff? But if they've got a mobility problem walking outdoors, especially, I would make that claim 100% before they turn state pension age.
What actually happens once they're state pension age, right after that? Do they still get ADP or does it go into something else?
So if you have made a claim, that would get quite messy. Probably the best thing to do would be to make the adult disability payment claim and then just wait and see what the result is for that. That would probably be the best route to take, because attendance allowance is still being managed by the DWP. So if you made a claim for that, you've kind of got then two departments dealing with a claim at the same time, and it could just get quite messy. And the adult disability payment is by some distance would be the better one to get, because that's potentially got the two components. So okay, I would focus that's probably the best course of action to take. The problem that I've got just now is the adult disability payment. It's quite hard to say how good or bad the decision making is, because they're taking a really long time to make decisions. So I've got people waiting 6 and 7 months to get a decision through. What I will say, the ones that I've seen so far are pretty good. But it's just quite a small number still, because they're just taking so long to actually make the decisions. But if I was putting a bet on it, I would probably say go with the adult disability payment, especially because that's got the mobility component, and just wait it out and see what they say.
Okay, right, thank you.
Again, Bill, if I'm sure Stephen will be happy to chat to you, like, one-to-one if there's any issues. Just let us know, because it's just so complicated. I don't know how you all get your heads around it.
Just another one, Stephen, that you mentioned, the adult disability payment. It's maybe moving away slightly from what the call's about. What's the difference between that and personal independence payment? Because the personal independence payment has got a mobility element in it, I thought, or have I got that wrong?
So there are very, very few differences. The Scottish Government largely copy and pasted the criteria.
Right. Is it the difference between the Scottish Government are going to do in the DWP UK?
So the Personal Independence Payments UK Government, that's the DWP. When they devolved it to the Scottish Government decided largely just to copy and paste the criteria here. And there is a kind of couple of good reasons why they've done that in practice. The first thing is they wanted to focus on what they called a safe and secure transfer. So they wanted to take the people that were on DLA and PIP, move them onto the Scottish version, and try and make sure that there wasn't any issues there, that people did claims didn't go missing, and there was no administrative problems and stuff. So they wanted to focus on that to make sure that there wasn't any massive issues. And to be fair, I've not came across any. The other reason that they had is that disability benefits can increase a reserve benefit. So if you get the Scottish version, like the adult disability payment, that can potentially increase things like tax credits or housing benefit and benefits that are reserved to the UK government. And the UK government would probably kick up a fuss if the Scottish government decided to make our benefit system more generous. And then because of that, they had to pay out more money that they weren't paying out for the rest of the UK. So they largely decided just to copy and paste the rules and then go, right, further down the line, we'll see what we can do to reform them. They did make some quite technical amendments that are probably going to make things slightly better, and we were invited to give advice on that, basically, the minister. So they had us sitting in a room all day, looking at all the definitions of the rules and deciding which way we could make things a wee bit better. And we did manage to actually get a very, very boring but a really, really important change made. With the personal independence payment scoring system, you can score 2 points if you can only manage an activity with an aid or appliance. And under the personal independence payment system, that only counts if it's actually a specialised disability aid. So you can't just use something to help you that's lying about the house or whatever. It's got to actually be like an occupational therapy type aid. And we managed to get the Scottish wording changed slightly so that it's basically if you've got to use any type of item to help you, that can potentially get you 2 points. So quite a marginal and boring change. But when you're sitting in a tribunal with somebody and they're being very specific about the legal test, that might actually help somebody get 2 points. A really boring example is there was a bit of case law with PIP where it was the type of heat that you get on a tap, and somebody had installed the levers rather than the star type shape because they said that the levers were easier to use because of their disability. And basically the tribunal judges said it doesn't count because it's anybody could get the taps installed just because they like them. So because it wasn't a specialised disability, that didn't count. In Scotland, because we got that slight amendment to the rules, that person should potentially get 2 points. So a very boring and very technical amendment, but that was some of the wee changes that we managed to get made. But largely everything else has just been copy and pasted.
Just on that, I mean, 2 points could be important. Could take you over
Could
the
be the
threshold?
difference, aye.
It could move you onto the enhanced payment, for example, to allow you to get a mobility car. One other question, Stephen. My daughter currently gets personal independence payment, employment support allowance, and she's on universal credit, and she's got all the associated council tax reductions, etc., and rent paid direct from her universal credit payment. What would happen when Hazel becomes pension age? What would change for her in relation to benefits?
Right. So if that is happening, assuming nothing changes in the rules, they don't come up with any other ideas before she hits state pension age.
She's a long way away.
There's every chance it could change.
Right. So
but just as it sits at the minute would be helpful.
Right. If that was happening now, what would basically happen is ESA would stop. That would be replaced by the state pension, and universal credit would stop, and that would be replaced by pension credit, and then she would claim housing benefit as a separate benefit.
And with the housing benefit, when you mean housing benefit, does that mean a rent is paid as it's currently paid? And
no, she would, as things currently stand, she would claim housing benefit as a separate benefit.
Right. And would it be based on your experience? Probably this is the question more than anything else. Would that remain the same as it currently is, as things stand at the moment?
Pensioners, the rates of payment for pensioners are more generous.
Oh, that's okay. Stop there.
Some would generally go up.
Right, that's okay. Thanks very much again.
You're welcome, Bobby. Does anyone else have any other questions or just want to share their experience or anything that they would like to ask Stephen or speak to Stephen about this evening about this? It's very, very interesting, but as I say, it's quite a confusing subject, isn't it? Okie dokie. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Stephen, for giving up your Thursday evening to come and chat to us. Thank you to all of you for joining us. I will share this. I think all of you are in the mailing list or on Facebook or connected to us in some way. So I will share this session with everybody because Bobby, you said earlier, it's a lot of information. So if you want to go back and re-listen or listen to it again, you know, to figure something out, then I will do that. And you've got a hand up there. Oh, you're on mute there.
Sorry, I just wanted to butt in, Lauren,
Okay.
about not specifically about the inheritance and how it affects benefits, but then about moving on to the next stage of that whole question as to, well, how do people deal with their how they're going to leave their stuff, you know, their monies or their housing or their funds and so forth. And then the whole issue of discretionary trusts or whatever. So is that going to be a topic for another occasion?
By all means, and you know that I'm always really keen actually for you guys to tell us what you want to hear about. And I know you yourself, you said that there's been a lot of stuff with transitions recently, and you know, so please, by all means, if there is something that you specifically want to hear about or think, you know what, I would really like to find out a wee bit more, we will do our best to either tell you ourselves or get somebody else to come and speak to you about it.
See, for me, I've already gone through this process because my mother died 8 years ago. So, and I've got 2 siblings who are both learning disabled.
Yeah.
So we've been through this process, but I just having this topic tonight made me think that will be the next stage, obviously, for people is to see. Now, obviously, you had so much interest in finding out about inheritance and how it affects benefits that the next obvious question is, okay, so people will then be saying, well, how do I plan?
Yes, yeah, no, exactly.
What's the next stage in it?
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly what we want to do is make this as relevant as possible for people. So by all means, I think you'll have probably noticed what we've been doing is trying to have a kind of monthly theme about things. So this month has been all about welfare rights, money advice. We've been posting things out on Facebook. Stephen's already done a couple of wee short videos for us. You've all seen those. So but certainly one of the, so what we've based these themes on, and is topics that people have come to us for help with.
Yes.
And one of those is future planning. One of those is exactly that. So yes, we will. And as I said, if anyone else has anything that they think, you know what, we would really like to hear some more about that, then please let me know, because I'm really, really keen. You know, I really enjoy coming and chatting to you all, but I want it to be useful for you, and I want you to get something from it. Next month, our theme will be health. Will be all about health. So we've got some fantastic speakers and information and resources around women's health, men's health, that type of thing. We're doing things a wee bit differently. So I'm moving into another role, so we're going to get other people in the team involved in this, which I think is great, because I say it to you all the time. I'm sure you all get bored of just seeing me all the time, so it's nice to see some fresh faces. So they will be involved sort of going forward, but that's not to say that I won't still be here to speak to you all. But thank you so much again. As I said, if there's anything that comes up that you want to speak to Stephen directly about, then let us know. If there's anything else you want to hear about, please let us know. All right,
Lauren,
thank you so much.
Lauren, before you go, could I just say, from me personally, and probably from everybody, Stephen, you're a breath of fresh air. You're very knowledgeable and straightforward, and even I can understand what you're talking about at times.
That's what I love to
Thanks
do.
very much.
You know, there's no messing around. It's just, this is how it is, and that's really clear. So, no, Bobby, I echo that. Stephen's a great help to me in my work as well. So, Thank you so much, Stephen, for coming and chatting to us, and I'm sure
No
we'll have him
problem.
back to pick his brains about something else soon. So, all right, thanks so much,
Right,
everyone.
thank you.
Take care.
Cheers.
Bye,
Bye.
guys. Thank you.
Bye.